You know, I have been listening to everyone that had something to say, and the interesting thing, if the public pays attention, is that when my Republican colleagues speak about SNAP, these are the things that I've heard.
I would also like to take a moment, thank you, Mr. Chairman, to dispel any rumor that this legislation cuts benefits to those in need. Saving and cutting are not the same.
This farm bill does not cut SNAP.
Thank you.
I would ask that my Democratic colleagues and everyone concerned about the SNAP program look at how much the program has grown since the 2018 Farm Bill. The modifications made to the Thrifty Food Plan will seek to keep it cost neutral and still allow for annual inflationary increases, as was mentioned.
Truth is, SNAP has been plagued by overpayments and errors. SNAP's national overpayment rate is 9.84%, leading to more than $34 million in erroneous payments each day. $13.15 billion a year. Look, this is all aided by sugary drinks, which are the second most purchased items sold through SNAP, accounting for 5% of dollars SNAP recipients spend on food, costing between $2 and $4 billion each year. The truth is, as the number of SNAP recipients has grown, our healthiness levels have fallen here in America. I think that's shameful.
It's not a cut. It's cost neutral, potential cuts, an increase in benefits. But every time you listen to the Democrats speak, they say the exact same thing. And the information that they're relying on is called data. And the data came from the nonpartisan CBO. The only information that we have before us to make a determination of how we will proceed is data from the CBO. This is what we're supposed to rely upon. I don't know where all of these different iterations about what's going to happen is coming from, but the data says $30 billion. That's what the data says, not what the Democrats say, but what the data says. We're not talking about the fact that we continually increase the defense budget. And when we increase the defense budget, one thing we've not gotten is for them to actually give us an accurate accounting. They can't get one. But you know what? We will put more and more and more and more money into defense, but then you want to nickel and dime people that are only getting $6 a day. Now, to think about, and I absolutely understand my colleagues. And honestly, I just wish we could be honest and say, listen, you know what? We don't have a budget that is balanced. Instead, we're in tremendous debt. I think the Democrats will agree with that. I think they would agree with that. We're in tremendous debt. I would rather my Republican colleagues say we're in tremendous debt, and instead of rolling back the Trump tax cuts and making sure that rich folk pay their part so that this country can do better because the most vulnerable are now going to eat. And we're not talking about eating the steak dinners that we eat. I'm talking about very basic food. And one thing that no one wants to talk about is the fact that in this particular title, there's this issue about SNAP choice. Now, my colleague from Virginia kind of started to go into it. But basically what happens is if you are poor in this country, then the federal government, you know, the people that love small government, the federal government is going to tell you things like you can't have hot food. That's a problem. They're going to tell you things like, you know what, if it's not nutritious foods as they define it, then it's a problem. I just want to invite some of my colleagues to my district. Now, I can't talk about what happens in rural America and the access or lack thereof that they have to nutritious foods. But unfortunately, sometimes the only food that you have access to in, say, a food desert like mine may be from the corner store, or it may be from the subpar grocery store that doesn't even have fresh foods available. Or if it is fresh, it's fresh only in name. We need to make sure that people get something into their bodies, and I appreciate every single one of my colleagues talking about children. Children. I don't know why we're debating whether or not children should have access to food. I don't know why we're debating, and deciding we're going to fix all of the world's problems at the expense of people that are struggling, especially when so many members in this chamber have struggled. Another thing that's not talked about a lot is that when you're talking about fraud, waste, and abuse, I don't want anybody to perpetrate a fraud on us either. But that is not defined the same way as, you know what, the person down at the office ended up giving me an overpayment for 50 cents. Those are different things. That's not fraud. That is someone making a mistake. And to sit up there and hold people accountable because someone made a human error mistake is in error. This is very simple. I don't know why it's such a big debate as to whether or not, or the idea, let me just make sure I hit this before my time runs out. I used to live in Texarkana, Texas. And for those that don't know, Texarkana is at the border of Texas and Arkansas. You're put in a situation where if you decide to go to the grocery store on the Texas side, which the grocery stores on the Texas side are better, but nevertheless, if you get your benefits in Arkansas, you can't go buy the groceries in Texas. How does that make sense? Like, this is micromanaging to no level, about $6 a day. We need to get it together. I yield.
I think we fundamentally disagree on whether there are cuts to the $30 billion in cuts to SNAP. There are, in fact, cuts. The cuts just don't start next year or the year after. They begin in 2027. As lawmakers, we must consider the impact of legislation more than 1 year out, especially with legislation as significant as the Farm Bill that makes changes that last 5 years, 10 years, and sometimes even permanently. We also know that based on the CBO baseline and independent estimates from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, the SNAP Thrifty Food Plan cut initially would take away a day's worth of benefits from participants, about $7 a month, and then would rise to almost 2 days' worth of benefits, about $15 a month. If the CBO is wrong, I'm willing to give it another look, but that's the information I'm going on. The CBO is saying that there will be $30 billion in cuts to the SNAP program. You may think that losing 1 day or 2 days a month worth of food is not significant, but I do. It's quite significant for a low-income family trying to manage every month to put food on the table and stretch their budgets to make ends meet. I also want to make it clear that disagreeing on an issue is not dismissing bipartisanship. That's the purpose of the committee process. I ask that we not be dismissive of members who disagree. That is why we are here, to have a dialogue, an open committee, and try to work towards a bill that is better and affects all of our constituents equally. So with that, I yield back to the ranking member, and I just want to remind the members on this committee, we do this once every 5 years. The people at home are counting on me to get it right now. So if there's something that I disagree with on this bill, I'm going to speak up and provide the opportunity for us to come back together and make it right. But until then, I'm not going to sit quietly on this committee. I yield back to the ranking member, Mr. Scott.